Hi there, this is Dr. Shirley Ryan of Conscious Life Institute. I'm back again to talk about rewiring the brain, pairing psychological reframing with a neuroplasticity perspective, or epigenetics. Today we'll get more specific as we look at the ways the role of placebo contributes to healing, and how that influx of data into our minds creates stressful scenarios. But as we learn to manage our energy, thoughts, and incoming data, it's surprising how the picture of our life changes. The future isn't set in stone, so when we manage the way we think, it clears a path to healing. The noise or stimulation around us and the multitude of voices that reside within us all fight for attention. These voices belong to our fears, old beliefs, and patterns, past experiences, family and friends, and society itself. Even science has now proven cellular memory belongs to our history, coming from our parents and grandparents. Somewhere deep among that mix, our own quiet voice, filled to the brim with wisdom, yet constantly overshadowed by all that lies on top of it, inadvertently triggering more stress. Stress nags at us, relentlessly causing physical, chemical, and emotional trauma to the body, and it's to our advantage to find those new life patterns before the mind and body are set in self-fulfilling prophecies. When stress keeps those chemicals turning around, knocking us out of balance, this energy will eventually turn into anxiety, depression, and sometimes physical problems. Now I want you to know that the future is open to you, so your inner dialogue and energy can create change by activating the placebo effect or spontaneous remissions that stimulates healing. Some people do this naturally, while others need to do something intentional to mentally or physically stimulate these inner resources. Now there's many ways to activate this part of you. Some people like meditation, others like living in beautiful states of bliss, some use biofeedback, and still others find it difficult to get past the thinking brain. These dialogues can cause negativity to spin out of control. And as I stated in the first video, we all have a healer active within us that we'll call the placebo effect. Just think how often your body, on the many occasions you've bumped yourself or cut yourself, was healed. For most of us, those bruises and cuts were miraculously healed automatically by our own little drugstore of antibodies tucked away in the brain. Simple yet effective healing. But what happens when our needs are bigger? Same effect, just higher expectations. And as I said, we have an amazing cornucopia of drugs within our brain, a veritable drugstore that is co-creative expressions of source. We can tap into this to reestablish a normal rhythm and flow of the body, regulating temperature, healing organs, blood, and just about everything that ails us. Now, the placebo effect can transform the inner biology, but don't forget what the placebo is. It's you. In the past, doctors used the term placebo as a placeholder within a treatment process or protocol, but today it's seen as the patient's own powerful healing connection, a remarkable healer within each of us that heals spontaneously. The key is the person's expectation to heal. Researchers have found that the placebo treatments, interventions with no active drug ingredients, can stimulate real physiological responses from changes in heart rate and blood pressure to chemical activity in the brain, even involving pain, depression, anxiety, fatigue, and Parkinson's. The idea that the mind can affect the body has been around for thousands of years, and it's well proven. Many ancient cultures depended on mind-body connections to treat illness. Shamans or medicine persons with healing powers may have worked partly through the patient's strong belief that the shaman's treatment would restore health. So I want you to imagine that we are all shamans co-creating our health. Just as an example, I want to share a famous case study on the placebo that I heard from science writer Michael Talbot over 25 years ago. In this interview, he talked about the patient with an amazing spiral effect from his experiences with the placebo, and I was forever changed by this. Dr. West was treating Mr. Wright, who had an advanced cancer called lymphosarcoma. All treatments had failed and time was running out. Mr. Wright's neck, chest, abdomen, armpits, and groin were filled with tumors the size of oranges. His spleen and liver was enlarged. Dr. West didn't expect him to last a week, but Mr. Wright read about a promising new drug called Reprograming. He begged his doctor to treat him with the new drug. Unfortunately, it was only offered in clinical trials to people who were believed to have at least 3 months to live. So Mr. Wright was too sick to qualify, but Mr. Wright didn't give up, and this is the key. Knowing the drug existed and believing the drug would be his miracle cure, he begged his doctor until he injected him with Reprograming. Well, that was on Friday. The following Monday, Mr. Wright was walking around. His tumor masses had melted like snowballs on a hot stove and were half the size they were originally. 10 days after the first dose of Reprograming, Mr. Wright left the hospital apparently cancer-free. Unfortunately, 2 months later, he read that Reprograming didn't seem to be very effective. Mr. Wright, who trusted what he read in the literature, fell into a deep depression, and his cancer came back. Now, his doctor, wanting to help save his patient, decided to tell him the initial supplies of the drug had deteriorated during shipping, but the new batch of Reprograming was pure. He then injected Mr. Wright with nothing but distilled water. Again, the tumors melted away, the fluid in his chest disappeared, and Mr. Wright was feeling great again for another 2 months. That is, until he heard the American Medical Association had announced that a nationwide study of Reprograming proved that the drug was utterly worthless. This time, Mr. Wright lost all faith in his treatment. His cancer came back, and he died 2 days later. One of many stories of the placebo effect in action. So if you hadn't figured it out by now, Reprograming was not the healer of Mr. Wright. It was his own brain's ability to create a cocktail of healing hormones and dispense it quickly and effectively for Mr. Wright. There are thousands of documented cases just around the placebo effect alone. However, when we begin to include the near-death experiences, some say the figure is more like 25,000 to 1 million spiritual self-healings. Once we start to understand that we can control this part of our mind, it seems to our benefit to cultivate our inner resources. And let me stress again, we are the placebo making our own internal pharmacy of chemicals. We have all the resources within us to change everything within or around us. And while hormones and stress can create disease through our own thoughts making us sick, they can also make us well. Cell biologists Bruce Lipton and Robert Lanza, neuroscientist Joe Dispenza, and other epigeneticists say that you don't have to unwrap genes that harbor diseases, not even if your family has had the disease. You can regulate your own internal states to heal everything within you. From a neurological or a psychological standpoint, you only need to think differently to rewire your brain, turning off survival centers that keep you stuck. These messages are based on old data that keeps us trapped, but when we embrace our power and connect with gratitude to bring our electrical thoughts in alignment with our magnetic emotions, we collaborate and create networks to what we want to see happen. This is the placebo effect in action and occurs when chemicals are released that create connections between mind and body and the right magnetic conditions to attract desired effects. Learning to manage the mind takes determination and can be more difficult when overwhelmed by stress. So through hypnotherapy, you can take your brain off its looping default system of old programming, the kind that sends the same old, useless messages around in circles. Self-hypnosis can be either positive or negative, so if you're going to use this process, get clear about what you want to see happen in your mind and body, as well as your inner and outer environments. By focusing, putting attention on those things that are important and relevant to your well-being, you take the first step. So what do you think? Is it time to get rid of my HMO or PPO or stop seeing a physician? Not at all. It's to your advantage to have a solid, integrative relationship with your physician while always expecting to be well. It's important to get a checkup and blood work once a year and stay informed about your body. There are many physicians these days that work outside of traditional Western medicine, where they honor using medicine as a way of assessing your physiology while allowing you space to make your own treatment plans. Working with your personal control booth, as we discussed in Part 1, is an act of strengthening your belief systems. Through hypnotic entrainment, you can let go of what is no longer in your highest and best interest and focus on what matters today. By getting new evidence for health and self-healing and letting go of outdated beliefs, you change and grow, as learning activates the fires of your brain. The best way to get balanced and healthy systems is to think differently, to uncover blocks to new beliefs while creating new belief systems that empowers your highest self to take action. Incidentally, how many times have you tried and nothing happened? Does self-sabotage come to shake your tree of faith? Does the trickster archetype haunt everything you're working for? In Part 3 of Rewiring the Brain, we'll take a look at our bioenergy fields around us, how feelings and thoughts influence our lives. Whether you use a traditional meditative style or deep hypnosis, you're on the way to a new way of life, different kinds of self-awareness, by just shifting your thinking to shape your world, the mind, body, and spirit.